Good morning, folks, friends, loyal audience. Welcome to my swaggering simulation show. Today's simulation, but it is a reality, of course, is about Ukraine again. Point number one, important point. Notice the rhetoric about Russia, whether from Biden or anywhere else in the world, about Biden, about Pustalenin committing war crimes by killing innocent civilians, whether in Bucha or Mariupol or anywhere else, has died down. Basically, it manifested or it erupted for I don't know what 1 2 weeks, and then in the media and all the politicians' statements and talking and jabbering and whatever it is, it died down. Basically, the situation is back to being Syria again, when the cities were being systematically destroyed and bombed and strafed and just nobody said a thing. Notice not even the United Nations is talking about that. Why? Because you Ukrainians are Nazis, and because those Syrians are ISIS. So there you have it, folks. Notice how everything died down and support for you. Okay, so that's point number one to bring to your attention, which really is indicative of covering up for Russia. The support for Russia comes in different levels. One, and that's the most important one, is financial. The entire edifice, in all its nooks and crannies, and pawns, and whoever it is in that edifice of Israel is supporting Russia now, whether it is the U.S. the establishment in the U.S. or Germany or China or Arab countries or here and there. They are basically supporting Pustalenin financially, because it became obvious that a few days after the war that the ruble collapsed and it was on its way to completely crash. And now hundreds of billions, if not more, are making its way to the coffers of Pustalenin. It's of course digital money, cheap, illegal digital money printed by Powell, by Biden, by Pelosi, by Graham, by McConnell, by Xi Jinping of Beijing, and MBS and Zayed, and those are Gulf Arab countries and here and there, and Europe, Germany perhaps, and so on, and ECB in particular. They are supporting the ruble going at supporting the ruble at maximum drive, let's put it this way. Support level number two is intelligence. Intelligence is meaningly they are given Pustalenin intelligence on everything on the battlefield, but it's proven difficult because the way the Ukrainian military conducted itself, it's pretty obvious they knew the pros and cons of fighting Pustalenin, and they knew that there are ways and means of technological advances and gadgets and instrumentations and satellites and frequencies, and that the West and Israel in particular did command that to help Pustalenin, which is happening, but it's not making any difference, of course. That's level two. Level three is really psychological. Psychological means if you hear anything on the media outlets, known ones, unknown ones, the internet, and these are the prominent websites, prominent TV stations, prominent radio stations, prominent whatever prominent, they are trying to insinuate to you as a EU citizen or Ukrainian or whoever it is that is standing with Ukraine that their situation is hopeless, but they cannot deny the facts altogether. So they dance around them. Three, they're buying time for Pustalenin to regroup, and the first leg of that happened. The first stage was conducted, and they withdrew from Mariupol, from Kiev and the northern here and there, and concentrating on the east a little bit to keep Ukraine busy and try to seize the south. So, and there are more support, of course, like trying to get the Ukrainians to become refugees. This way, they create chaos among the Ukrainians, and they make it less prone to murdering civilians by Pustalenin. So, if they empty the city first and then Pustalenin destroys it, for them that's acceptable. But if it's not, the polities are okay with them destroying, population and so on and so forth. So that's that, folks. That's the support, psychological, financial, and intelligence, and pressure on the Ukrainians, and trying to get people to become refugees out in West and so on, and so that's point number one, and that is the most important element in point number one is notice how the West is basically silent, and silent with content, content to being silent about the atrocities and the genocide and the poison and whatever Russia is doing, and they may in fact resort to look in the other way, even if Russia used new weapons of mass destruction like gas, like they did in Syria, for example. Point number two, and that is there is talk in the last couple of days about World War III by Pug Lavrov and his boss Chihuahua Pustalenin. And my question to you folks, whether you're Ukrainian and you're Scandinavian or Germanic or Spanish or Italian or you're Romanian or Greek or Arab or whoever you are, if those donkeys, those crude, bloodthirsty, blood-sucking weasel of lizard-eye cabal of Moscow faltered in Ukraine against few javelins and stingers and whatever, right, Stunga and so on. Aren't they like overstating themselves here, talking about World War III? My guesstimate is that if they go into World War III or try to expand it, and of course you have to find out, and then you will find out that NATO is not going to fight, right? Is going to dictate to its members to sit still so that Sylvester can kill Tweety, right? But even if it happened in reality, and Russia, it's all the hype around it, all the scare tactics, all the, you name it, they're drawing a halo and they're drawing a fake reputation around Pustalinins, faltered in Ukraine with very little resources in Ukraine. What do you think is going to happen to them if they engage military with F-16s, F-15s, Rafale, tornadoes, typhoons, F-35, F-22s, you name it, and then you have all these like anti-aircraft weapons, sophisticated ones and so on. Folks, Russia is nothing. You can take these words to the bank, and their threat of World War III, if they did not know that the West will cooperate with them and will support them and will work with them, they will not have made that statement. If they did not know the West will not respond, that includes EU, NATO, and the United States. If they know they were going to respond and take their threat seriously, they will not have made that threat. But the coordination comes from Tel Aviv, right? Because they want to scare the population into giving something to Russia, let's put it this way. So the offensive in the east is being taken place for how long now? 5 days, 6 days? And it's largely faltered. So back to our point here, point number two, and that is Russia is nothing, and let them bark all they want. Point number three. So point number one, point number two, and now point number three. Point number three is, again, they're back talking a nuclear war or usage of nuclear weapons. First thing I said way back, when they started talking about that that's an acknowledgement, or I wrote this on Twitter, that's an acknowledgement that they lost the war, right? Or they're going nowhere with that. But two, is an acknowledgement today, bigger acknowledgement that they're really going nowhere with that. And even in the West here, they're stereotyping and they're covering up and hiding the facts about what's going on in Ukraine, that they're showing on the maps that they have certain places that they don't have anymore, or never were in there anymore. The West, in the media in the West, which is pro-Israeli or Israeli for that matter, and politicians as well and so on, they're desperately trying to get Russia to do something or gain some grounds or whatever it is before they have to eventually give up, and raise, like they say, the four, like we say, and when an animal dies, it raises the four, right? Its legs go upward and it's back downward. So that's that, folks. I want to repeat what I said about the threat of nuclear weapons. One, these rats in Moscow will not use it. That's definitely the case. Two, you Europeans, Germans, whoever you are, how long are you going to live under the shadow of this threat or the fear that you're going to have, like every time they threaten? At this point I made before, go visit the history of my tweets and my rants and so on. You can't live like that, folks. They threaten you today and you concede land to them. They're going to come back and threaten you tomorrow and you're going to concede land to them. They're just like the robber coming back and forth to the store, and every time he flashes, the robber flashes their gun, you give them the money. And there's no police to take care of them, of course, to arrest them, to counter them, and to put a stop to their criminal activities. Who do I mean by the police? That's your NATO, folks. That's your EU, that's your NATO, that's US establishment, that's the Gulf countries. They will not do anything, folks. They will allow the threat. Instead, they will propagate the threats and then magnify them and inflate them and may allow them to burgeon in your psyche in order for you to give up something to Russia, to Pustalenins. So there is no end in sight. If their threat of nuclear weapons succeeds today, it'll succeed tomorrow. It'll have better chance of succeeding tomorrow. When you allow them to come in, and when you allow them to carry out first threat and then find success with it, you can rest assured they're going to come back again. You just can't do that, folks. And you may say, well, this may lead to a nuclear war. Well, you're in a corner then. What are you going to do? Like live like this all your life, or wait until they take over your country and make you live like animals and so on? That's that, folks. You can't live under this threat forever. And rest assured, I assure you from here and from here, that those Pustalenin rats will not use it. And if they use it, they will be burned into a crisp themselves. If anything remains of them, of course. They may actually respond because there's water in them, right? That the water in their bodies may become a thermonuclear device because they're inside a nuclear explosion now, and fusion will happen within them. So they're nuclear fuel. It's funny. So that's that, folks. These are the 3 points that are very important to you. And here's something I want to remind you with. Let's make this a point number 4 in this swaggering simulations program. Or today's episode. If Ukraine attacks Russia now, and that would be justified. Why? Because they attacked you first, and they're fair game now. And you score any success if Ukraine attacks Russia and scores any success on the grounds here and there, you will instantly see the world represented, of course. The world is not represented by these entities, but they're there, like the United Nations, NATO, EU, establishments in Western Europe and in the US and Arab countries, and China and India and Africa and here and there. You will see that they will not just demand and start barking and shouting that you should refrain from attacking Russia, But if you show abstinence and then continue to attack Russia, they will come and send forces and then try to destroy you. But it can't be any clearer than that, folks. So know your place and know what you're fighting for and know who you are and so on. And you're doing great so far. 3, there's a talk of negotiations. Ukrainian establishment negotiating with Russia. Negotiating what, folks? They're in your country. This is like you're negotiating with a terrorist or robber who's there killing your own family. Why would you want to negotiate with them, folks? What's happening in Ukraine is nothing short of a war that is one way or another, basic and simple. If Pustalinins win, they will erase you, not just from the map, they will erase plenty of your population, and their gulags again will taste your blood, and your blood will water the permafrost tundra in the gulags of Siberia and here and there, and history will repeat itself. You Ukrainians, you cannot allow that to happen again. You suffered long and hard and enough with deadly consequences by those Pustalinins ever since communism manifested itself. That is that, folks. Not any European country can afford that. So today's point is this: you cannot negotiate with those people, folks. The only negotiation that can happen if they leave if they leave your country, and they will leave your country, and then they start paying reparations for all the destructions that they caused in your country. It's that simple, folks. I'm saying stuff that I shouldn't say, really, because you should understand that yourselves. There is no negotiation with folks, with those, and while they're on your lands, and after they leave, they don't pay reparations. And if there will be any negotiation, there has to be a third party that goes in between and so on. And Ukrainians, be very wary of your establishment. They don't own Ukraine, not 1 inch of it. They cannot concede not 1 inch of it. They cannot talk to Russians or to Pustalinins while the latter ones are in your land and doing what they're doing. Even if they leave, you cannot talk to them anymore, because they have ill intentions and sinister ulterior motives. And their plots and plan and designs on Ukraine in the future will not change, folks. So long there is a Pustalinin lizard eye cabal of Moscow that is a leg of Tel Aviv, right? They will plan to come back and take over Ukraine. It's that simple. So the only way that you prevent that from happening and resist them and forbid them from coming and make sure they don't come is by way of being strong. Defend yourself. You have to defend yourself. These concepts are not revolutionary for people. They're not new. Everybody knows them. So be careful from negotiating or whatever it is, and know that those who pretend to be your friends and profess to donating weapons and so on, which they really are not doing, except like they're throwing you breadcrumbs, if you will, and throwing a bone or whatever it is. And they keep bragging about it out in the open and so on and so forth. So my advice to you folks is don't engage them anymore, and you're doing fine. You will do fine, Ukraine, regardless of the establishment in your country or in Russia or anywhere else. And have a nice day, my friends, and we'll talk later. Goodbye.